I joined in on the 15th of September 1958, and I remember walking in to the Palace of Arts in Wembley, which was a leftover from the 1924 exhibition. It was half empty. There were 3 scanners or area at the time, Unit 1, 2 and 3, plus one small one, a roving eye. Less than 6 years after I joined the BBC, I became a senior cameraman. I actually had the choice of the people to be on my crew because it was a new unit, and we were entirely a new crew starting as one.
I didn't actually like working in studio. You went in the morning and came out some hours later. It could be daytime, it could be nighttime. The variety on outside broadcast promised to be better. The attractions of the job was that apart from Wimbledon, and you do different things, starting at the top with royal events, public events, Troop in the Colour, Remembrance Sunday, drama. We did them all.
I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I noticed these 5 young lads living next door to me, and they had days off in the middle of the week. They drank beer, and there were young ladies around. I thought, these guys are onto something. So I went and had a word with them and found they all worked for the BBC. So I started in news at Alexandra Palace, and then I went to all the different departments in Television Centre. I went to film at Ealing Studios. Then I went to Outside Broadcasts. And at Outside Broadcasts, I thought, this is unbelievable. I actually went to Windsor Castle and was allowed to play with microphones, you know, at Windsor Castle when the Queen was doing a review of some scouts. And I thought this was magic. I'd never been to Windsor Castle. So OBs really opened my eyes as to what was possible. I started in black and white, yes. I was on MCR 25, which is a sister ship to MCR 21, which has been restored. And it was the last of the black and white units. When I went on to VT, my first VT truck was actually an old redundant, I think it was a TK truck of some sort, came out of redundant stores. And a colleague of mine had put a machine in it so it could record drama from the LMCR, which is a lightweight mobile control room. When I started, I was editing with a razor blade. When I left, I was pressing buttons on a computer. That was the range of change. It was used on every type of program, from royal weddings to events, to operas, to pop concerts. And I've been so lucky, I've made every type of program you've ever seen on television, wildlife programs, all sorts, because we were just involved in everything in OBs.
My father suggested I apply to the BBC in London. I'd sort of applying to independent television that was just starting in Plymouth under Peter Cadbury. Ono applied to the BBC. So I did, and the rest is history. I joined in November 1960. To see the job working for Peter was on the board, which was the only other job in Bristol I really wanted because he was a West Regional outside broadcast producer. And Peter had a PA, well, he was a director, John Dobson, who also was in the office. But John did a lot on his own, and I was working for these two. Usually we could dovetail everything. I remember the first swimming programme John and I did for Grandstand, about 2 months after I started working for them, and that was a bit of a shell shock for both of us, I think. Because, you know, in those days you had to get the numbers. It was like horse racing. I had to get the numbers of who'd come first, second and third so the cameraman could pick them out because they couldn't see. And you just had to be terribly aware and be able to tell the cameramen terribly quickly what to look for.
I applied and was very lucky enough to be taken on. It was at a time when the BBC were expanding. It wasn't long after the opening of PBC 2 and also the opening of the television centre. My first day going back to the television centre, and to this day I can't remember which crew I was going back to or who the senior cameraman was, because I walked in, introduced myself to the senior cameraman, and he said, "Oh, I've got a memo for you," and he handed me this envelope, and I opened it up and looked at it, and it told me to report to Kendal Avenue, the OB base, that afternoon. I don't regret having made the move to outside broadcasts, because it's just been wonderful. I think it's a privileged life. I actually feel sorry for a lot of people who the only reason they go to work is to earn money.
I was taken on as a probationary technical assistant, and I was on course number 1. And I started off in presentation studio P, which was at Lime Grove, and this was when I was just 18, and it was ever so exciting for me, because I was operating a camera on transmission within a couple of days of starting. In round about 1972, MCR 21 had been converted to have 2 colour cameras, and I operated that, and we did a fair bit of drama in various places. But of course, since the cameras were EMI 2001s and big cameras, there was no such thing as a handheld camera at that time, or a shoulder mounted camera. That came in 1974, 75. I always felt I was secure in my job. You know, I mean, I've only ever worked for BBC. I've had no other employer, and well, of course, nowadays that just doesn't happen.